I'll just come down here as soon as I finish it. Hello and greetings, everyone. I'm Pastor Edwin Strickland, and I serve as the Senior Pastor of Fellowship of Champions Church International, a worldwide ministry helping people to learn to live out their God-given dreams by walking in love and living by faith. And I get to be your host and your guide for this exciting journey that we're about to take that we call Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. I am your host, Pastor Strick, and this is the podcast where education, faith, and real-world solutions come together. Listen, whether you're just seeking to expand your knowledge base, whether you're looking to uplift your spirit, whether you're trying to just find common ground between the practical and the spiritual, I want you to know that you are in the right place. Together here on Ed Talk, our desire is to bridge gaps, to spark thought, and to nurture and mature our souls, our mind, our will, our emotions, our imagination, and our intellect. And so today, I am happy to be here, and I can't wait to share with you the enlightening conversation that we're going to have today. Before we get started, you know what I always ask you to do. I ask you to help me out with a little social media outreach. That is for those of you who happen to be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast live in the moment. What do I want you to do? I want you to hashtag, or I want you to alert your friends and your family. I want you to like this broadcast if you have the ability to do so. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, I want you to let me know. I also want you to let me know what city or state you're watching from. You can simply go to the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, and you can just write the word FB for Facebook or YT for YouTube, and then just let me know whether you're watching this live or if you're catching the replay. How do you do that? You just hashtag the word live if you're watching live. And if you don't see that little red box in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, that means you missed the live, but you are still watching the replay. So just hashtag replay and let me know. Why do I ask you to do that? It helps me to know where you're listening from. It helps me to know how many people are watching live and how many people are actually watching it on the replay. Shout out to all the men who are still watching. My analytics are telling me that I am still heavily, more than 50% of my listeners are men. And so I appreciate the fact that I'm saying something that is encouraging men to come back time and time again. And I appreciate all the ladies who have been supporting. I appreciate you too. I don't want to leave you out. I thank you so much. But we know women tend to be much more supportive in things like this sometimes than men are. So let me just remind you once again that there are a multitude of ways in which to engage the podcast. You can go to www.pastorstrick.com. And if you do that, that will take you directly to my YouTube channel, and you can subscribe there. And then you can listen not only to this podcast, but you can listen to all of season 1, and you can listen to the other 9 episodes that we have recorded for season 2. Speaking of which, season 2 is getting ready to come to an end very soon. In fact, Ed Talk won't be here next Tuesday. I have some things I have to do and some meetings I have to attend to that I won't be able to be here next week. So we won't have Ed Talk next week, but we'll come back and we'll have 1 or 2 more episodes before we finish season 2. So if you've missed any of season 1 or any of season 2, simply go to pastorstrick.com and you can check those out on YouTube. If you say you're not a YouTube person, that's not a problem. You can go to www.pastorstrickpodcast.com. Now, if you go to pastorstrickpodcast.com, what's going to happen is a landing page is going to pull up. And on that landing page, there are going to be links to multiple different podcast platforms. So if you decide you want to listen on Amazon, you want to listen to iHeartRadio, you want to listen to Apple Podcasts, maybe you want to do Google Podcasts, that's fine. However you listen to it, Spotify, I think it's on there as well. You simply go to www.pastorstrickpodcast.com and you can choose which platform you like to engage with. Okay. So again, one more time, I'm going to ask you to help me out. Share this on your page, share it on your story. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, let people know that Ed Talk is live. I do try to stay at just about an hour. And so because of that, I want to jump right into today's teaching. We're going to be talking about how to blow the capacity or how to blow the top off of your capacity. Last week, those of you that were here, you may remember. Those who are brand new and listening for the first time, you can go back and listen to that podcast. But we started talking about how to increase, and not just increase, but how to blow the top off of our capacity. And so last week when we got started, there were 3 learning objectives that we said that we wanted to look at. And so I want to repeat those because the third one is where we're going to spend most of our time today. The first one, we said we were going to talk about how to become aware of the possibilities that can increase our capacity and make us better by recognizing our value through self-awareness. So we talked a lot about awareness last week, and I'll mention a little bit about that as we get into today's teaching. But we talked a lot about how to discover self-awareness and how to increase our own capacity. And then we talked about how to identify and how to develop the capacities that we already have, the ones that's already within us, and how to understand each of those capacities and how they work together to improve our lives. Now, I said to you last week, and I hope you remember this, those of you that were with me, that we all come to the table with some innate capacities. And it's important for us to understand what they are so we know that we're not looking to see whether we have them or not. We all, as human beings, we have them. And it's up to us to develop them so that they can be used to increase our ability to increase our own capacity. And we call those things ability capacities last week. And we'll talk a little bit about what they were as we get into today's teaching, which really focuses on our third learning objective, which is how to make smart choices. How to make smart choices that will allow us to reach our fullest potential, and how to become successful by building up our existing capacities. So we're going to combine this idea that we come to the table with these certain capacities. And then if we understand what they are, we can build on those. But then today is really going to be about, okay, there are also some things we can do in terms of our decision making in terms of our daily choices that will allow us to blow the top off of our capacity. Because whether you realize this or not, you have more to give. You have more to give yourself. You have more to give to others. You have more dreams you can dream. You have more things you can do. You are not at your limits. You have a lot left to do. And so one of the things we talked about last week was this idea of awareness. And we talked about awareness being it's so important because when you become aware of what your capacities are, when you become aware of what the caps are on your capacity, when you become aware of who put those caps there, then you can begin the process of removing the caps from your capacity. And when you remove those caps from your capacity, you end up living a better life. You end up able to do more, to see more, to help more, to grow more. All of those things, just like releasing the lid off of a growing plant. And that plant now can just flourish to its full potential. And so we talked a lot last week about awareness and why that was important. We talked a little bit about caps as well, and we said that there are certain kind of caps that we have to be aware of. When I talk about caps, I'm talking about those things that limit us. And we said that there were two types of life caps, two types of things that can limit us from growing in our fullest potential, from growing in our fullest capacity. And it is the ones that we typically put on ourselves, and it's the ones that other people try to put on us. And as a result of that, we have to learn which one of those caps we need to spend the most time removing, whether it's the ones that other people try to put on us or the ones that we put on ourselves. And we landed on the fact that we really need to focus on these caps that we put on ourselves, that when we limit ourselves, it is far greater limiting than when someone else is trying to put a cap on us. And so we talked about making sure that we get rid of these particular caps. We also talked about the fact that our capacity is not set. We are not stuck. We have the ability to grow. Even if you're 50 years old, if you're 70 years old, if you're 20 years old, it doesn't matter. Your capacity is not something that is set. Far too many people associate the term capacity with limitations. And they assume that their capacity is somehow predetermined. And we talked about this last week, that our capacity is not predetermined. What we show up with is not what we have to end with. We have the ability to improve and to grow and to learn and to become better every single day, not only with our God-given abilities, not only with our ability capacities, but we're going to find out today we can grow if we learn to maximize our choice capacities. Now, one of the things we talked about when we talked about awareness, we said that if you would grow in awareness, right? And if you would choose to develop your abilities, and if you would make the right choices on a daily basis, that you could reach the top tier of your capacity. And so many people, they really want more out of life. They really do, but they don't have habits that lend them to receiving more. And so last week we called this idea the capacity challenge. And I challenged you. I said to you last week, I encouraged each of you to make sure that you did something on last week, from last week until today, that you looked at some capacity that you had, one of those 7 things we talked about that you were pretty good at, and how could you improve on it? How could you improve on that, right? It was interesting because last week I made a statement and I didn't know how it would go over, but it was received pretty well. And I was explaining that it's so important that when you begin to look at your own life, that you identify those abilities that you're already strong in. And that rather than ignoring those abilities and spending all of your time trying to develop the abilities that you may be much weaker in, that you spend time developing those abilities that you already have some strength in. And that resonated with several people. And it was interesting because between last week and today, I probably had 3 or 4 people send me video clips of other people. One was a professional basketball player. One was an entertainer, and the other was a corporate business executive. And in some shape, form, or fashion, they were all saying the same thing that I was saying to you last week, which is that you have to learn to understand what you are good at, and you got to become a master of it. You have to get better and better and better at it. The basketball player that someone sent me, it was interesting because most people didn't think he would be in the NBA very long. And he said he looked around and he saw all the different skill sets that people needed to be in the NBA. And he began to become aware that he didn't have some of those skill sets. But one of the skill sets that he had that he was very good at was his ability to rebound. And he said that even though he was an above average rebounder, he made it his life's mission to become one of the best rebounders the league had ever seen. And so he didn't spend a lot of time working on his shooting. He didn't spend a lot of time working on his dribbling. He didn't spend a lot of time working on his passing. He spent majority of his time understanding how the basketball came off the rim, how to position his body between the rim and other people, how to make sure that when he was always on the opposite side of where the ball was shot. And he had all of these nuances about rebounding. And because he became such a dominant rebounder, he has been in the league 13 years when most people thought he wouldn't be in the league but a couple of years. Why? Because he learned to increase his capacity in the area he was already good in. And I can't stress to you enough how important that is. I'm not telling you not to work on your weaknesses. I'm telling you not to spend all your time looking at your weaknesses and trying to fix them all while ignoring the capacity that you already show up with by looking at the thing you're already good at. It was the same thing true of the entertainer. It was the same thing true of the guy in corporate. They learned to look at their capacity and say, you know what, I may be good at this, but I need to become great at this, because becoming great at this one thing can take me to the next level because my capacity is not set. My capacity is not set. And so then we started talking last week about how do we recognize our value and how do we learn to increase our capacity? Well, we talked about the way that we do this, as I said earlier, is we learn to remove those caps off of our lives. See, each and every one of us has a great deal of potential on the inside of us. Not only are we good enough, and I need you to know that you are good enough. Not only are you good enough, but you and I have the ability to get even better and to achieve greater significance in our lives when we build upon our capacity. We just need to be aware of the caps in our lives. We have to become aware. And sometimes becoming self-aware can be painful because we realize something about ourselves that we had not acknowledged before. But once you can pull the scab off of that and you can acknowledge and become aware of where you are, now you're on the road to building toward greater success. Because after awareness, once we become aware, then last week we got into the second step to changing our capacity. And we said it was to recognize that we have many capacities, okay? And so let's talk real quick about these 7 capacities. And I'm gonna go through them really quick. I mean, really quick. We said there were 7 capacities that we all show up with. And we call these ability capacities. And we call them ability capacities because they were abilities that we all have, okay? And here they are. Number 1, we said that all of us have energy capacity, okay? What is energy capacity? It is our ability to learn to push on physically. We all have that in us, and we can develop that. When things get tough, it don't make us cave in and quit. We keep going. We also said that we all show up with emotional capacity. What is emotional capacity? It is our ability to manage our emotions. You may think you can't, but you can. You can learn to manage your emotions. And we all show up with emotions, and we all show up with the ability to learn to manage them. And that's so important because if we don't, then we will be managed by our emotions. We also said that we all show up with something called thinking capacity. What is thinking capacity? It is our ability to think effectively. A lot of times you can ask people, well, why did you do that? Or why did you make that decision? They go, well, I really don't know. It's because people haven't learned to be metacognitive. What do I mean? People don't think about their thinking. And when you don't think about your thinking, when you don't practice thinking about your thinking, you don't make the best decisions. But we all have the ability, we all have a brain. Some of us use more of our brain than others. Some of us use our brain more frequently than others, but we all have a brain and we all have the ability to increase this area called thinking capacity. And then we also said that we all come with what's called people capacity. That is our ability to build relationships. You may not like people, but the only reason you don't like people more than likely is because you had a bad experience with people. Once you get over the idea of having that bad experience with people, you can learn how to build effective relationships. It is the reason my wife and I once a month do a class called Relationships 101. A lot of people still think that because it's called Relationships 101 and it's done by me and my wife, that somehow it's a marriage class. It's not a marriage class. It is a class about relationships. And a lot of people don't know how to do relationships well. They wonder why they don't have any long-term friends. They wonder why they don't stay friends with people very long. They wonder why people don't like them for long periods of time. It's because they don't know how to build relationships. But you can learn this. It's part of your capacity. You can learn to blow the top off of your capacity. Okay, you can learn to blow the top off of it. Why? Because this idea of building relationships is so important. And then we talked about having creative capacity. What is creative capacity? It is your ability to see options and to find answers. Okay, we talked about this last week. It's your ability to see options and find answers. When you see a problem, if all you ever see is a dead end, you need to work on increasing your creative capacity. And then we talked about production capacity. Remember, these are all things we all have and we all show up with. What is my production capacity? It is your ability to accomplish results. Okay? It's your ability to have the stick-to-itiveness in order to produce that which you said you want to produce. Now, it may mean you have to build up your resiliency. It may mean you have to build up your patience. You have to build up your long suffering. But those things are possible, and you can build up your production capacity. You can be more productive. I once read a book called The Art of Execution. That was such a tremendous reading for me, because one of the things it taught me is about the power in producing, not just this idea of thinking about producing, but actually producing. The power of execution. And some of you need to learn to build up that production capacity in your life so that you can start to see the results. And then we talked about the last one, leadership capacity. Okay. We talked about leadership capacity. And I said that everybody, I don't care who you are, you have the potential to be a leader. Why? Because leadership is about influence. And if you can influence anyone, you have the ability to be a leader. It is your ability to lift and to lead other people, to encourage them to go further than they would have went on their own, encourage them to go harder than they would have went on their own, and encourage them to stay in the fight longer than they would have stayed in the fight. You have that ability. And the first person you want to lead is yourself. The first person you got to learn to lead is yourself. And so we talked about how these things, these particular capacities I just listed for you, were all about our abilities. We all show up with them. But then I mentioned to you today that we want to talk today about smart choices. Okay. These are all these abilities that we have. But if we don't combine them with these different choices that we can make, then we're going to find ourselves lacking, even if we try to build up some of these other areas. So let's spend the rest of our time talking about what I call choice capacities. What are choice capacities? Choices have to do with doing the things that maximize your capacity. Somebody said, what if I don't have the desire to increase my capacity concerning people? Here's the thing. If you don't have the desire to increase your capacity concerning people, you're going to miss out on opportunities because there are some things we can only do with the assistance of others. One of the things that I hate the most is when people contact me only because they want something. And I think most people probably share that same sentiment. There's nothing more irritating than having somebody call me and say, "Hey, Pastor Strick, I'm just reaching out, man. How you doing? I got a new business opportunity I want to talk to you about," when I ain't heard from them in months. They never call to see how I'm doing. They never call to check and see how my family's doing. I only hear from them when I want something from them. And if you don't improve your ability to increase your capacity with people, you will be seen as one of those people when it's time for you to act, when it's time for you to need someone to partner with, or to introduce you to someone, or to put you in a room where you wouldn't have been in if it wasn't for them. And so life is choice driven. I'm not making anybody make a decision about what you have to do. I am telling you what research says is important, and that is you have to learn to build your capacity to work with people, because if you don't, then at some point you're going to max out, because you're going to need people to go to the next level. You're going to need someone to go to the next level. And so, again, let's jump in here and talk about these choices. That's a great question. Let's talk about choices. Choices is about doing the things that maximize your capacity. Okay? About maximizes your capacity. The word choice implies that we have other options, right? So if I'm talking about choices, it's implying that we have a choice. And the reality is that we do. We have a choice. How much capacity do you want in your life? That's the thing you have to ask yourself. That's the thing you have to ask. How much capacity do you want in your life? Are you satisfied with where you are? We talked to our church weeks ago about different levels of commitment. And one of the things we were encouraging our partners in our ministry to do is to look at your life and make a decision, at least about the areas that's important to you, that you were going to be at a level 5 commitment. That is that level that is a resolute commitment. It means I'm going to do it no matter what, come hell or high water. I don't care what happens. I don't care what shows up. No sideshow distractions are going to get me off. I am committed to this thing, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to see the end of it. And so you have to ask yourself, how much capacity do you want? Because so many times I see this happen. And I said this last week, most of our dreams are uphill dreams. The problem is so many of us have what I call downhill habits. You don't have the capacity to get yourself up the hill where your dream is, because you haven't developed the types of habits that will allow you the strenuous effort necessary to get to your dream. And so what you end up doing is you just end up becoming a consummate dreamer. You're always dreaming about something. You're dreaming about the job. You're dreaming about the house. You're dreaming about the vacation. You're dreaming about the healing. You're dreaming about the relationship. You're always dreaming of how wonderful things would be, but none of your habits are doing anything to get you there. None of your habits are doing anything to get you close. And so as a result, you either have to dummy down your dream or live with the dissatisfaction that there's a dream that is unattainable to you. And I don't know about you. I don't want dreams that I can see in my life only to know that there's no way I'm ever going to be able to reach it. And not because I'm not able to, but because I'm not willing to. And so you've got to make the right kind of choices if you're going to blow this top off of your capacity. So you have to ask yourself, how much capacity do you want in life? You have the right and the power to make that decision. The great thing about choices is that they add to the things we learn and the gifts that we already possess. Okay? Somebody said this might not be the live for me. I'm trying to slow down. If you're trying to slow down, it might not be the live for you. It may not, but you may want to save it because it may be a thing in your life that comes up and you be like, oh, I need to learn how to get there. And just because you need to learn how to get this, because you need to get there, won't mean you know how. But you have to make that decision because, again, life is choice driven. So to maximize our capacity, because that's really who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people who want to maximize their capacity. I'm talking to the people who want to say, I want more out of my life than I currently have. I want more out of my life than I'm currently getting. I want more out of my relationships. I want more out of my career. I want more out where my health is concerned. I want more where helping others is concerned. I want more out of my life. And I know I have more to get. I know I have more to get. So in order to maximize our capacity, we must choose, hear me, to be intentional. I must choose to be intentional. How do I become intentional? I focus on one area at a time and I take action every day. Take action every day. You can maximize your capacity by making choices in some key strategic areas. If you want more, you have to be strategic. I don't know why so many people, especially those in the body of Christ, act like being strategic is a bad thing. Do you understand that greatness never happens by accident? Greatness doesn't happen by accident. Even if you stumble into something, even if you stumble into an idea that could be a world-shattering idea, it's going to take effort to get it to the masses. Nothing happens by accident. And the truth of the matter is, too many people want the path of least resistance to the goals they say they want. You say you want a better job. You say you want a better life. You say you want a better place to live. You say you want your community to be better. But all you ever do is dream and you never put forth any action to make it happen. Why do you think it's going to change? Understand, these areas I'm talking about today, these aren't skills or talents. We talked about that last week. Today, what I'm talking about are some choices that you can make. You're going to hear me talk about probably 7 or 8 things, and they are daily choices that you can make. And if you make the choices intentionally to do them, I can guarantee you, hear me, I can guarantee you, I bet the house on it, that if you did them consistently and if you did them with fidelity, that literally in 30, 60, 90 days, you would see your life start to change. The more you live in these choices that we're going to talk about today, and the more you learn to love the choices we're going to talk about, the larger your capacity will become and the greater your success will be. I need to know, do I have anybody out there who wants more out of life? If so, I need you to just type in the comment, I want more. If you don't, that's cool. But if you do, I need to at least see 3 people who say, I want more. Because if you don't want more, then this isn't going to be good for you, because today we're talking about more. All right. And we're talking about the choices you can make to receive more. Now, remember, last week we talked about what I called ability capacities. It was the abilities that we all have innately. It was the abilities that we all show up with. And I talked about how you have to be aware of which one of those abilities we talked about last week that you are probably better at than some of the others. And I said, those are the ones you need to start focusing on in order for you to get better in that area, rather than spending your time on some of the ones you're weaker on. Today, these particular things I'm going to talk about is not a pick and choose. These things I'm talking about today are things you need to be working on a daily basis. Okay. So let's get into it. Number 1, here is the capacity that you need to be working on every day. It is called the responsibility capacity. What is the responsibility capacity? It is your choice to take charge of your life. One of the reasons successful people are so successful is that they see and they seize opportunities. Let me say that again. One of the reasons that successful people are successful is because they not only see with their eyes or see with their soul, but they also seize opportunities. Oftentimes, so many people sit back and we look at successful people and we wonder to ourselves, man, I wish I could go through those doors of opportunities. I wish I could do that. I wish I could be like them. I wish I had that kind of chance. But what most people don't understand is that we see the results, but we oftentimes do not see the deep level of personal responsibility that those individuals had to make in order to make the most of those opportunities. You must seize opportunity. Without increasing their responsibility capacity, those successful people could not have increased their opportunity capacity. Did you hear that? If you don't increase your responsibility capacity, you won't increase your opportunity capacity. Nobody's going to come and pick you up and move you through the door. You're going to have to say, I am responsible for the kind of life that I want to have. And when the opportunity is there, I must seize it. I must get up. I must take effort. I must have daily habits that lead me to my uphill dreams. Nobody's going to carry me through the door. It is your responsibility to make the decisions and to have the right kind of behaviors in order for you to experience the opportunities that you say you want. The way you take control of the direction of your life is to take responsibility for yourself and for your everyday actions. You want your life to get better? Make better decisions. You want your life to be better? Have better habits. People who do this see dramatic results in their life. Stop waiting for someone else to come along and get your life better. You are responsible for your life. You have to make the responsibility capacity choice every single day. Now, can you control everything? Absolutely not. You cannot control everything, but you can choose to control the things that are within your realm of control. Most people don't succumb to bad situations because they can't control certain things. They succumb because they don't control what they can control. And when you don't control what you can control, you lose control of the entire situation. So begin taking charge. Begin saying to yourself, I'm going to make decisions today. I'm not going to abdicate the decisions that impact my life. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be active, and I'm going to be aware of the things necessary that I need to do in order to live a life that I want to live. You have to acknowledge that, yes, you have the ability to choose. Then you have to identify which parts of your life you can control and which ones you can't. And then you need to spend more time focusing on the parts of your life that you can control, hear me, rather than worrying about the parts of your life you can't. You can't control whether it's going to rain tomorrow, but you can control your commitment to getting exercise every day. My wife and I were talking this morning, and I was saying to her, hey, we've got a commitment this month that we're going to walk 100 miles. It's what we do in October. And so far, we're on track. In fact, we're a little ahead. But we know that there may be rain tomorrow. And I said to her, if it's rain tomorrow, I'm going to go to the mall, and I'm going to walk my miles in the mall. She said, okay. She said, I don't like to do that. If it rains tomorrow, I'm going to go to the gym. We're not going to allow what we cannot control to rob us of what we can. Does that make sense to anybody? You have to say, I have responsibility for my life. It doesn't matter what happened in my past. It doesn't matter what's even happening in my present. It doesn't even matter what's going to happen in my future. I can control the part of my life that I can control. And so that's what I'm going to control. Okay? So that's the first choice you have to make. It's called responsibility capacity. Once you've made that responsibility capacity choice, Now you need to go to what we call our character capacity. What is our character capacity choice? It is your choice based on good values. It's the choices that you make based on good values. Let me explain what I mean when I say good values. Values create the foundation of character, and character provides the foundation for success. The results of developing character are life-changing. Good character is a choice that you make every single day. When you make the decision to have good character, it's a daily decision that has to be made. When you choose to do the right thing based on a positive value, your character begins to expand. And every time your character expands, here's what happens. With every right choice, you develop the strength to make another right choice. And with that right choice, you begin to get better and better at making the right choice in difficult circumstances. In contrast, every time you choose to cut corners, every time you choose to take the easy route, every time you decide to take the path of less resistance, every time you decide to compromise on your values or to turn your back on what you know to be right, it shrinks your character. And the smaller and the weaker your character gets, the more difficult it becomes to make another right choice. That's why if you say, okay, I'm going to eat right, then you got to make sure that no matter what, you're eating right every opportunity you get. Why? Because the more you eat right, the more it strengthens your ability to eat right. And the more you strengthen your ability to eat right, something else will come up in another area, but now you'll have the fortitude to make that tough decision because you've been practicing making tough decisions. But the converse of that is true too. And you know it is. If you say you're going to eat right, and you walk in your kitchen and nobody's around, and you sneak a handful of chips, you walk in your kitchen and you eat a ding dong, you walk in there and you grab your scoop of ice cream and put the container back in the freezer, you are cheating yourself. And the easier it becomes to cheat the next time. And then before you know it, you have no ability, no capacity to have strong character when it comes time to making a good decision. See, understand this. Good character uses the same standard in every situation. If something is right, it's always right. If it's wrong, it's always wrong. People with good character are consistent. Did you hear me? People who have good character are consistent. People who try to use multiple standards with different people and in different situations end up living a weak and fragmented life. Let me say that again. People who try to use multiple standards with different people and in different situations end up living a weak and fragmented life. That's the reason that people who say they love the Lord and they go to church, but then they got a group of ratchet friends and they got a group of Christian friends and they got a group of middle ground friends and they're trying to be everything to everybody. They end up living a weak and fragmented life. Why? Because they don't make good choices consistently. And people with good character are consistent. When a person lives a fragmented life, others never know what to expect from that person. And that's the reason some people really don't know how to take you. Because you have not been consistent in your values. You haven't been consistent in showing up. I tell people all the time, if you want to go on vacation with me, I don't care if you go on vacation with me, whether I go to Las Vegas or Miami, I am the same person in all of those places. I don't care. I don't care whether the Saints are around or the Saints aren't around. That's why people say, oh my God, I can't believe you and Pastor Sean go to Vegas. Why? We're the same people in Vegas we are in Springdale. We're the same people in Miami that we are in Springdale. We're the same people in New York that we are in Springdale. Why? Because we don't live weak and fragmented lives. When a person lives a fragmented life, other people just don't know what to expect. They don't know how the person will act in any given situation. And if you want to increase your capacity, right? That's one of the things people need to know about you. They need to know the consistency of your character. They need to know that if they put you in a position of authority, you're going to be the same way, whether your boss is watching or your boss is not watching. See, I'm not a thief. I don't steal. So you can put me around $1 billion or $10. If it ain't mine, I ain't touching it. Why? My character is the same. I'm consistent. Whenever you make a commitment to another person, what you're really doing is you're creating hope. And so if your character isn't consistent, then you're damaging the hope that you give to other people. When you keep that commitment, you create a bond of trust. Good character helps you follow through on that commitment, and it helps you to develop trust with people. And it's important to develop trust with people because at some point in your life, even if you don't think so, you're going to need someone to speak on your behalf. You're going to need someone to open a door for you. You're going to need someone to be a friend to you. And you're going to need to have someone who can speak to your character even when you aren't in the room. Okay? So we've talked about responsibility capacity, and we've talked about character capacity. Now, here's one I think is really important. I put it at number 3, but it probably could have been number 1. It's what we call abundance capacity. You have to make the decision. It's a choice that abundance is available. Abundance capacity is your choice to believe that there is not only more in the world, but that there's more than enough for everybody in it, and that includes you. Why are people who embrace abundance so readily able to say yes? Think about that. Why are people who embrace abundance so readily able to say yes? Let me tell you why. It's because they possess a high belief in many areas of their life. They believe in themselves, they believe in others, and they believe that there's enough for everybody. They say things to themselves like, there's more to me than what people have seen. I have more to give. I have more to show. I can do better. And their belief drives their behavior. Lack of belief, which is literally a characteristic of scarcity, ends up holding us back. We hesitate not because we are unable to do something, but because we don't have the confidence in ourselves to do it. Abundance-minded people seize the moment. Remember I talked about seizing opportunities? You have to be abundance-minded to walk through that door. When a door is open, you have to see the potential. You have to see the opportunity. Abundance-minded people seize the moment because they see potential. You can be a person who sees potential in everything. The economy is bad. You see the potential. The economy is good. You see the potential. You get a bad report, but you see some potential. You get a good report, but you see some potential. Abundance-minded people seize the moment because they see the potential in everything. Abundance-minded people believe they can do more than they've done before. Abundance-minded people believe they can perform at a higher level than they have before. Abundance-minded people believe they can grow more and that they can keep growing. This belief not only keeps them going, but it also allows them to be the first one to take action. There's a thing that we talk about in our church all the time about people being trailblazers. We're called, at my church, our name is Fellowship of Champions. As a result, a lot of people in our church get called to do something first. And what happens is those who don't understand that and they don't have an abundance capacity, they will wait to see if somebody else does it first and then they'll go. But the reward typically is for the first person through the door. So you got to learn to have confidence in yourself that when God is calling you to something, especially something you say is a dream of yours, that you have the ability to seize the opportunity because you have an abundance capacity. How do I develop an abundance capacity? By making the choice to see opportunity every day. See, I want you to hear me. Contrary to popular belief, our perspective is not determined by what we see. I want you to hear me. Our perspective, your perspective, my perspective, contrary to popular belief, it is not, N-O-T, it is not determined by what we see. It is, however, determined by how we see. And that comes from who we are. It's not about what we see. It's about how we see. What do I mean? You can take two people, and those two people can be in the exact same situation, and yet they can see things completely different. While a scarcity-minded person often looks at a situation and they think to themselves, there's just no way. An abundance-minded person sees the exact same situation and they think to themselves, there's got to be a way. Abundance requires you, it forces you to see opportunity that scarcity would never allow you to see. In fact, the world is a better place as a result of people whose perspectives were shaped by abundance thinking. So make the decision today to change your perspective from one of scarcity to one of abundance. And you will see how you will open the door to innovation and positive change, not only for yourself, but also for others. Some of you are stuck right now. And you're stuck right now because you have a scarcity mindset. And when I say a scarcity mindset, I don't just mean where money is concerned. I mean, you have a scarcity mindset where everything is concerned. You don't see possibilities. You don't see opportunities. But the world abounds with opportunity. The world abounds with possibility. But until you make the decision that you're going to be an abundance-minded person and you're going to blow the top off of your capacity of seeing the possibility, you will only see limitations. But limitations weren't designed for you. And so we're going to get you to this next level. How? We're going to do it through our next capacity, which is called discipline. Our discipline capacity. What is our discipline capacity? These are choices that I get to make every single day. My discipline capacity is my choice to focus now and to follow through. Hear me. We won't achieve great things accidentally. And never forget, everything worthwhile is uphill. Achieving what you want takes time, it takes effort, it takes consistency, it takes energy, and it takes commitment. Self-discipline is what makes those things possible and puts success within your reach. You must embrace self-discipline. Here's the good news. Self-discipline is something that you can develop. You don't even have to be born with it. It's a choice you get to make and keep on making every single day. The single greatest way to increase your discipline capacity is to know what's important to you. Do you know what's important to you? It's a question. It's not a just a general thought. I'm asking you that question. Do you know what's important to you? Because if you know what's important to you, you can begin to develop self-discipline toward that thing, and then you can begin to develop the touchstones necessary to make those things a reality in your life. So much of what we do in life has no deadline. It doesn't have a deadline. And so as a result, we end up putting off things that are important because they don't have a deadline. But if it's important to you, then you have to start to create these external deadlines so that you can create an awareness of time. What do I need to get done? I'm in the third quarter of 2023, the final quarter, the fourth quarter of 2023. What do I need to get done? We just completed the third quarter. I got October, November, December. On December 31st at 11:59, it's going to end the year. And I'm going to go into 2024 if I'm alive and the Lord says the same. What do I need to accomplish over these next 3 months? What's important to me? Discipline is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes, and the better we become at developing it even more. And so you got to learn to make the choice to be disciplined. I talked to you last week about my things to do list. I won't talk to you about it this week. But I'm saying to you, did this past week, did you get accomplished the things you said you were going to get done? Or do you still have those 6 or 7 major things that you need to get done that you said to yourself every day you were going to do them, but you never put any action to get them done? Who do you need to call this week? Who do you need to be in contact with this week? What appointment do you need to make? I know I got a lot of male listeners out there. Have you made your appointment for your annual checkup? You've been saying you're going to do it since January. Have you made the call? Have you made the call to make the appointment? You say you're going to start working out. Have you started? When are you going to start? You say you're going to be on a particular eating plan. Have you got rid of the stuff out of your house that's going to be a temptation to you? What are you doing to discipline yourself to get yourself to your goals? You only have one life. You have one life here on earth. That's it. And when it's over, it's over. What are you doing to accomplish the goals you say that are important to you? You got to become disciplined. How do you become disciplined? It's through this next choice that you make, and you make it daily. It's called intentionality. It's called intentionality. How do I increase my intentionality capacity? Right? What is intentionality capacity? It is your choice to deliberately pursue significance. Intentionality living can be distilled into 3 characteristics. If you choose to embrace them, you can live with a much higher capacity for intentionality. Okay? When I talk about intentionality, these are the things that I say to myself. These are the things I say to my sons. These are the things I say to my daughters. These are the things I say to the people in my church that I'm close with. And this is what I say in general when I'm talking, if people will listen. I say there are 3 important characteristics that go into intentionality. And here's what they are. If you're going to be a person who's going to be intentional, number 1, you must be deliberate. What do I mean? We only get one shot at life. And whatever we fail to do will be left undone. Far too many people think that good intentions are enough to make a difference, but they're not. You can have great intentions that lead to nowhere. In fact, you've probably heard me say this many times before. Good intentions are overrated. Good intentions are overrated. Who cares about your intentions if they don't produce actions that correspond? So if you're going to be intentional, you got to be deliberate. What's the other thing you got to be? You got to be consistent. What do I mean when I say consistent? Whatever we continually do in life compounds itself. If the things we do are negative, life will get worse. If what we do continually is positive and right, life will get better. If we practice intentionality, it compounds and life continues to get better. People ask us all the time, why do y'all always say y'all life get better and better and better? It's not just because we sit back and say, oh, life, we want you to get better. No, we are deliberate. We are consistent. And then the third thing is we are willful. Living a life of intentionality is an act of your will. When I say your will, I'm talking about your soul, your mind, your will, your emotions, your imagination, and your intellect, the soul part of you. You can will yourself to do something. I don't always feel like doing something, but if it needs to be done and it's important, then I rely on my intentionality capacity. I'm deliberate. I make sure I get up and get it done and prepare for it. I'm consistent. I do it over and over. And because I do it over and over, even when I don't want to do something, it's actually pretty easy for me to do it because I'm so consistent at doing the stuff I don't want to do. Does that make sense? And then I become willful. What do I mean? Most people don't lead their lives. They accept their lives. Did you hear me? Most people don't lead their lives. They're not out there deciding the direction of their life. What they're doing is they're accepting their life. Whatever happens to me is the direction I go. I get bumped this way, I go this way. I get bumped this way, I go this way. I get held back, I get held back. I get pushed forward, I get pushed forward. Whatever life does to me is what I accept. No, I lead my life. I lead my life. I am the captain of my soul. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm God. No, but I am the captain of my soul. I get to choose how I respond to things that happen to my mind, my will, my emotions, my imagination, and my intellect. I lead my life. Some of you ought to put that in the comment section. I lead my life. I don't just accept my life. I lead my life. Why? Because I work on this thing called intentionality capacity. I am intentional. And I build up my intentionality by being deliberate, by being consistent, and by being willful. And once I learn to do that, it begins to have a positive impact on, watch this, next capacity that I make a choice about every day, my attitude. My attitude. Why is my attitude important? Because this is about the choice that I make to be positive regardless of the circumstances. Regardless of the circumstances. Coaching and encouraging yourself is huge when it comes to choosing a positive attitude regardless of the circumstances. In fact, it is the single best thing that you can do to help yourself. You need to be your own encourager. You need to be your own cheerleader. You need to be your own motivator. You need to be your own coach. You need to daily work on your attitude. Just like there were those three things that we talked about in intentionality, where we talked about being deliberate, we talked about being consistent, we talked about being willful. There are also three things you need to do when it comes toward your attitude. Because these are fundamental things that you can do to put yourself in a positive position most of the time. Am I telling you that you're not going to have opportunities and where you're going to be sad or have a negative thought or not have the right response? No. What I'm telling you, though, is through intentionality, we can limit the amount of times that that's happening. There are people who are literally living their every day, every waking moment in this negative space. And they're only happy when something goes good. I want to train you into learn to be happy even when things don't go good, because you see opportunities in the bad. You see those opportunities. You learn how to seize the moment even when things didn't work out the way you thought. So what do I need to do in order to improve my attitude capacity? I need to learn, number one, to be humble. Why is being humble important? Because it's much easier to face life difficulties and respond positively when you display humility. How can you work on being humble? Do small things that may seem unimportant to you, but that helps benefit other people. It'll help you cultivate your humility. Do them with love, because love helps to build that humility. You got to be humble. If you're going to have a great attitude, humbleness is a part of it. And then here's the thing that most people struggle with, number two, under this attitude capacity building, you got to become teachable. Teachability is wanting to learn from every experience and from every person whenever there's an opportunity. A lot of people can't be taught. You can't tell them nothing. They know everything, even though they don't produce anything. They don't produce anything, but they know everything. You got to learn to be teachable. Being teachable requires an appreciation for everything that we experience and knowing that we can always learn something if we have the right mindset. And then lastly, you've heard me talk about this ad nauseum, and I will continue to talk about it ad nauseum until I can't talk about it anymore. And that is that you need to become resilient. What does it mean to be resilient? It means you learn to maintain this positive attitude posture, and you learn to get up when you get knocked down, and you don't let negative things take you out. You don't give up, you don't cave in, and you don't quit just because something didn't go your way. Time spent on being angry about the past means less time for you to be able to optimistically move forward and to do the things necessary to get you what you want in life. Okay, the thing didn't work out. Learn to compartmentalize that, learn from it, and then move on. Learn to be resilient. Don't always look to quit and give up and cave in. If you'll look around you, if you'll keep your eyes open, there is somebody right now willing to come alongside you and help you do what you can't do for yourself. But if you're not teachable, if you're not humble, if you are negative, you won't even see or notice the people who have your answer. And so you have to work on your attitude. One of the things my wife talks about all the time is having an attitude of gratitude. One of the things she can't stand, especially when it was from our kids, is them not being grateful. You might not have everything you want today. Everything might not be the way you would have drawn it up, but you know what? It's better than it could be. No matter how bad you think it is, it's better than it could be. And I say to people all the time, the reason you ought to always be grateful is because I could throw a rock and hit 100 people, and those 100 people would take every problem you have and exchange it for every problem they have. You think you got it bad, but there's someone who has it worse than you. And so you got to learn to have an attitude of gratitude, to work on that attitude capacity. It's a choice you can make every single day. And then number 7, we got 2 more and we'll be done, is what I call risk capacity. What is risk capacity? Your ability to get out that comfort zone. Pastor Nitra says it like this all the time. The comfort zone is not comfortable. It's just familiar. It's just familiar. When taking big risk, you cannot depend always on hype or wishful thinking, because hype and wishful thinking cannot withstand the heat of the risk. You know, folks will gas you up. Folks will hype you up. Folks will tell you could do all of this. But when you get out there, you got to make sure that you spend some time developing this risk capacity, knowing that it may or may not work out the way you plan. But taking the risk is better than playing it safe. You need to understand what you're dealing with. When I endeavor to do something new, it's not that I'm being pessimist, but I always think about worst case scenarios. Why? Because if I can think about the worst case scenario, and I can look reality dead in the eye and say, if this thing happened, what would I do? Then when I get in that situation and that situation arises, it doesn't take me by surprise. First of all, I'm a firm believer that if God told me to go, I need to go, regardless of what I encounter through the journey. If God told me to go, I'm going. God is my comfort zone. God is the place where I'm familiar. So what I'm going through doesn't matter, but I got to be willing to step out. I got to be willing to seize that opportunity. I got to be willing to go through that door, right? Risk is rarely comfortable. It requires us to get out of our comfort zones. We have to take the necessary steps forward in the face of risk. We have to learn to deal with our emotions and with our doubts. That's the reason I told you earlier. I said we all show up. We all have the ability to have this thing called emotional capacity, to control our emotions. Why is that important? It's important for you to develop that because it's going to let you take greater risk. What do I mean greater risk? I mean, it's going to allow you, I'm talking to the believer, it's going to allow you to believe God and to go where he's told you to go, even when your mind says that doesn't make any sense. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Did you hear me? Everything rises and falls on leadership. That is never more true than during times of great risk. That is the reason that I talked about this leadership capacity, your ability to lift and to lead others, including yourself. See, the size of leadership must be equal to the size of the risk. If you're going to attempt something difficult, you need to have good leadership. You need to either provide it for yourself or you need to find a partner who can help you lead. If you are preparing to take a big risk, it may require every leadership skill you possess to accomplish it. But don't take that lightly. Keep growing as a leader. The more you increase your leadership capacity, the more you will increase your potential for risk capacity. I told you earlier, these things dovetail and layer on top of one another. So I come to the table with these abilities, the ones we mentioned on last week. I got to figure out which ones I'm already pretty good at and then kind of work on those even more. And then I got to think about these choice capacities we talked about today. And I got to be willing to work on these every day. Every day I got to work on these. Every day I got to make sure I'm working on my responsibility capacity. Every day I got to make sure that I'm working on my character capacity. Every day I got to make sure I'm working on my abundance capacity. I got to express my mind and see more possibility. Every day I got to work on my self-discipline capacity. Every day I got to work on my intentionality capacity. And every day I got to work on my attitude capacity. And every day I need to be thinking about taking the next risk. What's the next thing I need to do to accomplish my goal? And then lastly is what we call our growth capacity. What is growth capacity? It is your choice to focus on how far you can go. Don't let somebody else tell you how far you can go. You decide how far you can go. You make the decision. And if you decide you can go further tomorrow than you went today, guess what? You'll go further. And if you decide next week you can go further than you did the week before, guess what? You'll go further. Why? Because a person's capacity is limitless. And our desire should be to explore how far we can stretch it. Some of the most significant things in life take great time and great effort. But the joy of the journey toward them, toward those goals, toward those dreams, they come from new discoveries that we make along the way. Our knowledge and discoveries become the motivation for us to continue the journey. It is only after we go a long distance that we can look back and realize just how far we really came. Soon we begin to realize that it is not the destination we were even seeking. Rather, we desire the growth that we experience from it. And honestly, at the end, we understand that there's really not even a finish line. You ever been in a car with some kids, or maybe you was the kid, and you were asking, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How much further do we have to go?" Most parents tell their kids, they say, "Don't ask me that again. Just sit back and enjoy the ride." Why? Because it's really not about the destination. It's about enjoying everything that leads up to it. I know you got goals. I know you got dreams. I want to help you get there. But more importantly, I want you to understand and appreciate the journey necessary to getting there. That's what makes you a better person, not the goal, not the dream, not the desire. It's the process of you getting there. It is the journey that you take. It is who you become on the way to your dreams, on the way to your goals, on the way to your desires, on the way to your listed outcomes. The person you become is much more important than just the destination. Failure, hear me, is not your enemy. Failure can teach you valuable lessons. And while failure is inevitable in some cases, all of them equate to learning opportunities, or what we call learning options. Failure helps you to develop resiliency and endurance with direction. Not endurance for the sake of getting knocked down and getting up just for the sake of getting knocked down. I'm talking about resiliency and endurance with direction. You are aware of yourself and your ability to improve. If you develop these abilities that we talked about last week, the 7 that you come with, right? 7 or 8 that you show up with. And if you make a decision every day to choose these capacities we talked about today that will help you improve, I can assure you, you will begin to reach your maximum potential. Your life need not have limits. So wait a minute, Pastor, how can you say that? Your life need not have limits. The only limits that we have are the limits that we put on ourselves or the limits that other people try to put on us. God doesn't put limits on us. How do I know? The Bible says, if thou can believe, all things are possible. If all things are possible, he's telling me then that my life should be a life without limits. So what do I need to do to increase my capacity from where I am today to where I'd like to be next month, to where I'd like to be next year, to where I'd like to be in a decade from now, or where I'd like to be a half a century from now? What do I need to do? I need to understand what abilities and capacities that I naturally show up with. And then I need to understand that I am actually better served by building on the capacities that I'm good at while still working on the ones I'm not so great at, but I need to really build the ones I'm great at. And then I need to make sure that I am making the right choices, making smart choices every single day in these choice areas. What are my choice areas? I said to you once, I said them once, I'll say them one more time. It's responsibility, it's character, it's abundance, it's discipline, intentionality, it's attitude, it is risk capacity, and my growth capacity. And when I work on those areas, I am telling you, I can start to blow the top off of my capacity in my job, in my marriage, as a parent, as a business owner, as a person who's employed, where my health is concerned, in any area you can think of, any area that you are wanting to increase your capacity, these are the keys to doing it. But it won't happen accidentally. It will not happen accidentally. You have to make the decision that it's important enough for you to be intentional to do the things to get you where you need to go. And if you do that, I promise you, you'll blow the top off of your capacity. Listen, this has been another great broadcast. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate those of you that were here. I appreciate the people who will be listening to the podcast throughout the week or whenever you listen to it. I want to remind you once again, Ed Talk will not be here next week. I will not be here next week. I have some things I need to do next Tuesday that just don't allow me to be able to show up here next week. I'll be back the week after that, and I think we'll have 1 or 2 more episodes before we conclude season 2. Man, I appreciate everybody who shows up week after week. I appreciate all the gentlemen who are listening. I appreciate all the ladies who are showing up, because you guys show up and you're much heavily on my live than on the podcast itself. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening. If it's somebody you think would benefit from knowing about the Ed Talk podcast, I invite you to share it with them. Right? You can go to www.pastorstrick.com and just tell them they could go right there and subscribe to the YouTube channel, or they can go to www.pastorstrickpodcast.com, and then they can go there, and that landing page will take them to any platform that they want to go to. All right. Listen, I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys later. Hope you have a great week. Stay committed to the things you said you are committed to. Don't cheat yourself. Don't rob yourself. Build up your capacity so that you can be the best you can be. All right. God bless you guys. Have a great day.